Good evening and welcome to the weekly Lawrence City Commission meeting. And a couple rules of the road here. If you are going to speak tonight, you kindly come up to the podium, state your name, and you've got 4 minutes to speak. At 3 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll ring our little chime, sweet sounding music. Sounds like this. That means you've got a few seconds to wrap up, and please be seated. Let the next person use the podium. When you're addressing the commission, only address the commission, no other members in the audience or no other staff members. And last but not least, if you'll pick up your phone and please put it to silence so it doesn't disturb anybody. We'd appreciate it. All right, starting on the consent agenda. All matters listed below on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, then that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Are there any items any commissioners wish to remove for separate discussion and vote?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to remove number 10.
Number 10 is removed. Any other items? Any member of the public wish to remove any item from the consent agenda?
Oh, so we're not going to talk about the traffic calming?
That is number 10 that's been removed to talk about separately. That's your item, right? Number 10? Okay. Yes, it'll be removed. Wait just a second. I'll call that item in just a moment, please. All right, any other items? All right, in addition to the balance of the consent agenda, I want to add claims to vendors, 212 claims to vendors in the amount of $1,124,270.57. I entertain a motion at this time for the balance of the consent agenda and the claims.
So moved.
Move Damick, second. Dever, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries 5-0. Now, item number 10, which is to concur with the item is to concur with the Traffic and Safety Commission for a traffic calming device on 27th Street between Iowa and Louisiana. Staff, make a presentation, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. On December 3rd, the Traffic Safety Commission did hear a request for traffic calming on 27th Street between Louisiana and Iowa Street. Traffic data collected by staff did indicate that it met the minimum criteria for consideration of traffic calming. There were a couple of members of the public that spoke in favor of the request, and the Traffic Safety Commission did vote unanimously to recommend that traffic calming be allowed on 27th Street. There currently is no funding available. It would be placed on the list of other traffic calming projects that have been approved previously. It's estimated that due to the length of this, it's about a mile in length, that it could take 6 or more devices to actually calm the traffic all the way through there. An estimate of maybe $90,000 to do that. And we did do a ranking on that because we do have a ranking policy also. And based upon the criteria of that ranking, it would actually jump up to number 1 citywide for traffic calming. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
How do you rank that? Is that volume and speed?
Part of it's volume, part of it's speed, part of it is if there are pedestrian-generated facilities in the area, like the park and the bike path. Also, we look at whether there's a sidewalk on one side of the street or both sides of the street. And then we also look at the number of reported crashes within that area during the past 3 years.
And how many do we have on our waiting list?
There's about 17 right now, I believe, 17 or 18.
Okay, so in staff's opinion, this is the most needed.
Based on the city's criteria, yes, it's number 1.
Okay, other questions? Thank you. Public comment on this item? Do you wish to comment? Please go to the podium and tell us your name.
My name is Landra Fair, and I live on that street, on 27th Street, and I am on the neighborhood association, and it's something that has been of a concern in the neighborhood association as long as I've been a member of it. I have gone door to door on part of the 27th, at least in the Indian Hills section, and most of the people that I spoke to also shared my concerns about the speed and volume on the street.
Okay.
So just something that the neighborhood has been concerned about for quite a while.
Do you live on that street?
I do,
So you observe
yes.
pretty firsthand? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got a question?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I noticed that the public comment, you had mentioned that, or actually it might not have been you that mentioned it, but that the most popular options raised were, was a raised crosswalk at the trail crossing
Right.
in the park. And I guess what we're going with, or recommendation, is the speed humps versus that crosswalk. Is that- Or, was that, I guess, as far as being a popular option, was that from the neighbors themselves? Anything scientific about that?
Bonnie Johnson, who is the president, or was the president of the Neighborhood Association, is also an urban planning professor at KU, and she had asked her students to do a project where they were to design ideas for the neighborhood, and her students all had noted the traffic on 27th Street, and they had done several scenarios for traffic calming ideas, and then the ideas that the students had generated were presented to the neighborhood. So that's where the ideas came from, was a student project, and not really input from the city as far as what was possible, because I understand that we're a collector street and there's certain options that aren't available to us.
Mhm.
But the raised crosswalk where people walk across the street at Naismith Park was a popular idea for a lot of the residents, just because even though there's a sign posted that that's yellow pedestrian sign indicating that you're supposed to stop for people that are waiting to cross, most people don't stop. So maybe the raised crosswalk would make people understand you're supposed to, yield to the pedestrians.
Sure.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Well, and I'm Bonnie Johnson, who
Great.
spoke at the Traffic Safety Commission meeting, so if there are any other questions,
Well, I just brought it up because I grew up in the neighborhood too, and I was thinking, it's always been a collector street. I can't think of, is there been something particular that's happened that's picked up the number of cars going through there, or, I'm going back 30, 40 years, and it's always been a collector street. The crosswalk sounded like it would be a good idea, especially if it was in any way signalized there, and then just in my mind, speed humps, they have the dividers right in the middle.
Well,
And
and-
I saw some dissenting points of view. I just thought maybe there'd be more people here to talk about it tonight, so I'll give a chance.
the 27th Street is a collector street, and as you know, collectors collect from neighborhoods, but this is also a crosstown street. It is a very nice shortcut to avoid going to 23rd or going to 31st. And there's one stop sign, and it's a nice wide street, and there's some fun little hills. And so it's fun to drive really fast down 27th Street, even though there's homes on either side. And so at different times, the Neighborhood Association has heard a lot of complaints from people on 27th about the fast traffic, and even stories of tire tracks through yards and cars in yards. And there are a couple of places along there, particularly Missouri, the intersection with Missouri. That is a humongous wide intersection that cars don't have to slow down hardly at all to make the curve onto Missouri. So that my students were standing at that corner when traffic came whipping by, and they don't have to slow down at all because of the wide curb radii. And so that's an issue. And then on Arkansas Street, if you're turning off of Arkansas onto 27th Street, there's limited sight distance. So there's some issues with that much traffic going that fast through a residential area.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mayor, along with Commissioner Carter's comments, who grew up, I think, east side of the Naismith Valley. My wife and I lived in the 1500 block of West 27th, and those houses have to access, back out or pull out right onto 27th Street. And I do agree that one of the things that's happened over time is the amount of, whatever the draw is on South Iowa, and people do use that as a crosstown path, because going across Iowa Street over into Prairie Meadows area and those kind of things. So there is a lot of through traffic, but as somebody who lived on that street to the west side of the valley there, it's a bit of a dangerous situation, just because you have to back in and out of those driveways onto the street. So,
Sure.
and the traffic is quick.
Sure.
So.
Any other public comments on this item? All right. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Well, I just wanted to give a chance for public. I thought there might be a little more for that, but I would move to go forward with Traffic Safety Commission's recommendation.
Moved by Carter,
Second.
second by Amix. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. City Manager's report, please.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the commission. It's that time of year when we're starting to receive a number of annual reports from city departments and divisions. And one of the first ones out is Jonathan's annual report in the city clerk's office. You see a lot of really good activity in his division, and appreciate the work of all of those that work with Jonathan in regards to that. Interesting statistics. Average length of city commission meetings was 2 hours, 30 minutes. It's a statistic, not a goal, so.
I feel like I failed last year. I lost ground. I don't know if it's part of the economy picking up, or
you got
by letting people talk too long.
We've got the annual report from the street division. You approved the 2013 street pavement maintenance program. Of course, the street division is involved in a lot of other activity as well, and you see that report and all the important work that they do. Scott McCullough in the Planning and Development Services Department hosted a stakeholder meeting on rental licensing that was very well attended. You see the draft outline of a possible rental licensing program that was submitted. We also received some stakeholder comments as well. Scott's working on the full report, and we'll have that on a future city commission agenda here in February. And then finally, we did receive a settlement payment in a class action suit. You see that information. I recall when we first heard about this, sometimes you get those solicitations and you don't know if this is the Albanian prince that is promising to give you the inheritance or some type of lottery, or if it's the real deal, and it was the real deal. And so I appreciate the work from the utility department. They devoted substantial time and resources to filling out the necessary forms, and you see that we did get a sizable settlement payment that Ed immediately put it in the water and wastewater fund, where it will be put to good use. Be happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Questions?
Sir.
I would like to point out one statistic for my colleagues who just kind of belittled me, in that in 2011, there were 724 pages of minutes, and in 2012, there were 1,000 pages of minutes. That's a 25% increase, and yet we only expended an additional 7 minutes per meeting. I think that's pretty marvelous.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done.
All right, thanks for that nice report. There. Figure out how to get back to the program. All right, first item on the regular agenda is to consider adopting resolution number 7002, indicating the intent to issue up to $40 million in industrial revenue bonds for the Kansas Athletic Facility at Rock Chalk Park.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. The city has received an application for industrial revenue bonds related to the KU Athletic Facilities portion of the Rock Chalk Park project. This industrial revenue bond financing, as other considerations with other projects that you all have seen, It's a conduit financing mechanism whereby there is no financial obligation of the city whatsoever with regard to the transaction. The reason why the city is being requested to issue these in this case is in order to access two economic development tools, the sales tax exemption for construction materials and also a property tax abatement. It should be noted that if these facilities were constructed by KU through their normal mechanisms, these facilities would automatically enjoy a sales tax exemption and also a property tax abatement, as the other KU athletic facilities already do. Based upon an estimated $10 million budget for construction materials on the project, staff would estimate the value of the sales tax exemption at approximately $885,000. As explained in the agenda materials that you have before you this evening, the agenda item on the agenda tonight is a resolution of intent to issue the bonds. It does not grant a property tax abatement. In fact, there is a more detailed city process regarding the consideration of a property tax abatement request, which does include a benefit cost analysis and also consideration by the city's Public Incentive Review Committee. There would need to be a notice of a hearing and a public hearing in front of you and additional consideration by the City Commission for that piece. Staff will continue to work with the applicant on preparing those next steps then in the process. Meanwhile, city staff does recommend approval of the resolution of intent in front of you this evening. And we also have with us this evening Gary Anderson, who's the city's bond counsel from Gilmore and Bell. And I wanted to request if Gary could speak a bit to the next steps in the process of approving the industrial revenue bonds and the bond issuance, should you proceed this evening, and also recap for you what this resolution of intent accomplishes this evening. And also, I should mention that Curtis Peterson, who's an attorney for the applicant, is here this evening in order to address any questions that you have and to comment on the request. And at the conclusion of their remarks, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Gary?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Gary Anderson, Gilmore and Bell. In the interest of starting 2013 off on the right foot to get that 2 hours and 30 minutes down to a lesser amount, I'll be brief with my comments. As Diane said, the resolution before you tonight is solely a resolution of intent to issue the industrial revenue bonds for the KU portion of the Rock Chalk Park. That'll allow the city to apply for the sales tax exemption certificate that can be used in connection with acquisition of construction materials. As Diane said, this will come back before the commission in the form of an ordinance which would approve the bond documents. And also at that meeting, there would be a public hearing in connection with the proposed tax abatement, which again, the tax abatement that is being proposed would be the maximum statutory period, which is 10 years. As Diane mentioned, the statutory process would also include published notice and also notice to the school district and the county, but that would all occur after it goes through the internal city process of the Public Incentive Review Committee. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the resolution. As Diane mentioned, this is similar to what's been done in connection with the ORIAD and the 9th and New Hampshire project.
Why don't you explain to the public how this bond is sold, our liability in the case, and who might be the buyer of the bond?
Sure. As Diane mentioned, these are conduit bonds, so that the sole source of repayment of the bonds would be the lease payments in connection with the industrial revenue bond. The city has no liability or obligation in connection with the bonds. Similar to other projects, it's anticipated that one of the parties involved in the transaction, and there are several entities involved, but it'd probably be the Bliss Sports entity that would actually be the purchaser of the bonds. Again, this is a structure to obtain both the sales tax exemption and the property tax abatement, city would have no liability in connection with the obligations.
Thank you. Other questions? Mike?
Gary, this is a resolution of intent, but understand in section 8 on this, it talks about authorization to proceed. And we are hereby giving Bliss authorization to proceed with acquiring, constructing, and equipping of the project. What happens if through this project, we don't like the abatement request, or there's something that comes forward that we don't like, and we don't do the ordinance? Aren't we kind of saying, go ahead and do the deal, but what happens, are we under a contract, I guess, by the resolution of intent and allowing them to proceed with the construction and the acquisition of everything?
Commissioner, short answer is no. If they decide to proceed at this point and start acquiring construction materials, they will be able to receive the benefit of the sales tax exemption. However, if the IRBs are not issued, they will be required by state law to reimburse the state the amount of the sales tax that was exempted. So there could be two things that could happen. One is you don't issue the IRBs at all, and then they would have to repay any amount of the sales tax exemption that was utilized. Or two, you decide to proceed with the IRBs, but you decide not to grant the property tax abatement, then they would just receive the benefit of the sales tax exemption under that scenario.
Okay. And so then this resolution of intent only covers that portion, as I understand it, the KU portion of Rock Chalk Park.
That is correct.
Okay.
Other questions? Yeah, that's a good distinction to make tonight. This is just the portion that is KU's portion. It has nothing
Correct.
to do with the city and the city recreational center. All right, other questions? Thank you. Has the staff completed their presentation? Okay, public comment at this time?
Mr. Mayor, Kurt Peterson with the Polsley Sugar Law Firm, 6201 College Boulevard in Overland Park, here on behalf of the applicant, as Mr. Anderson said, Bliss Sports LC. I will try to be even briefer than Mr. Anderson, if that's the theme tonight. Really, a lot has been covered by Ms. Stoddard and Mr. Anderson. I would be remiss, though, if on behalf of the applicant and behalf of Thomas and Drew Fritzl, if I didn't say we are very enthusiastic that on the stadium side of this project that things have moved forward with the zoning, the annexation, and really a lot of progress has been made. So I want to share that exuberance on their behalf. Also really wanted to share our enthusiasm for the prospect of having a co-located city rec center, as that is something that we believe could really provide some amazing synergies for everybody in the community. The key element involved in this project that distinguishes any other University of Kansas sports facility that makes it not eligible for sales tax exemption on construction materials and equipment, and then also not having available to it property tax exemption is, as Ms. Stoddard said, the fact that this is a little different. And the little different, I thought I'd shed a little more light on that, is the fact that there is an in-between element here, a financing element, a developer that is the Fritzls through Bliss Sports LC. Without them, this project couldn't happen, as Kansas Athletics would tell you. But that's the upside, right, that they are involved. Because they are involved in the structure, as Mr. Anderson said, there's many entities. It does make it in a technical way with the statutory scheme that, again, those two benefits aren't available. So the theme from our perspective, which has been hit on already, but I'll emphasize, is we're really just trying to put this deal, the stadium deal, back on the same footing as KU Athletics has with all of their other sports facilities by picking up these two benefits again under the statutes. Emphasizing something that was said but is extraordinarily important here is, again, that there's no city risk, being that these are conduit bonds. These bonds will be bought by the developer, as said, and will be, and something else that wasn't said that may be intuitive to you already, but at least for the public, that this is not a financing transaction. That is, industrial revenue bonds can be for financing purposes, but here it's simply something that is it's a statutory scheme that allows you to buy the bonds yourself with your own loan and equity money and receive the proceeds right back. So it's not a financing. And again, the city's not at risk in any way. In a month or so, we hope to come back before you and discuss the second half of this request, which is the property tax exemption. But again, underlying what Mr. Anderson said tonight, we're here just to ask for your consideration and approval of the resolution of intent so that we can move forward at our risk, Commissioner, as you asked and Mr. Anderson answered, in getting sales tax exemption on the materials we buy for this project as we move forward. Last point I want to make is, if it's not evident, that the benefits of these two elements, again, here to talk about just the first sales tax exemption tonight, but also when we do come to talk to you about property tax abatement, the benefits of that are completely enjoyed by Kansas Athletics, the university. Nothing is enjoyed in terms of those benefits by the developer. It's simply the developer is here to provide financing and oversight and development activity, but those flow absolutely through in the documents to the University of Kansas. With that, we hope for your support tonight for this resolution of intent, and I stand ready to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Mike?
So, Mr. Peterson, is the total cost of the KU portion of this then the $40 million?
That's the estimate right now. It's 40 million total. 10 million, as Ms. Stoddard said, is construction materials of the 40.
Okay.
So 25%.
Okay.
More questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comment?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Laura Ruth. I'm here this evening speaking as a citizen, resident, and taxpayer. I'm speaking as an individual. In 2009, the city adopted an overarching economic development policy which specifically identifies sustainability and environmental considerations when the city provides incentives or funding for projects such as this one. In reviewing the application for the request that's being made tonight, I was just a little disturbed to note that neither any commitment to LEED certification or green building techniques or even Energy Star certification is being promised by the developer. And this is an awfully big project. It's a lot of money, and I guess I really would ask that the city put some focus on making sure that we are maximizing public dollars, because it is at least $800,000 in lost sales tax revenue, to ensure that this is as green as it can be. It's going to be a pretty big energy hog, and I hate to see it proceed without some nod to sustainability. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, back to the City Commission for discussion.
Yeah, and just to Laura's point there, I know we've been having conversations about not necessarily, this is on the rec center anyway, not being LEED certified, but at least being LEED eligible, because there's a cost that may be not necessarily worth it to get certified, even though we meet the criteria. But I'm totally out of the loop if we're aware of any discussions about green efforts with KU's portion as well.
Commissioner, you are correct that for the city's recreation center, we've asked that the architects work so that the building could be certifiable for certain LEED standards, not that we would go through that process. That is correct. I am not aware of any thing in regards to that, in regards to the KU facilities. I can make that inquiry and ask about that, and that information can be presented through the process that still remains, the Public Incentive Review Committee review, and then coming back as well in regards to the adoption of the ordinance.
I think it'd be good to share, not necessarily if they're LEED certified, but what efforts are being made, if not LEED certification. That'd be great.
It seems like with KU stuff, this is mostly outdoor stadiums.
Right.
I mean, there may be lighting that could be a better quality lighting, more energy efficient, but I don't know if LEED applies to outdoor stadiums. I'm not well versed enough to know if it doesn't.
There may be aspects of the construction that,
Locker rooms
that
or
will run off. There's a variety of different green aspects that could be incorporated into the project. So an update would be nice.
Okay, good point. Anything else? Mike?
Mayor, just comment quickly. The KU portion of this, I have not had any problem with this. I think that we should go ahead and proceed with this portion. I do want to, I do have to say this, as we are looking at making our payments through one of these days for the rec center with sales tax dollars, this exemption on materials to be used, you know, at the park, you know, does concern me, because there's 800,000 that could be used, but I'll bring that up. And
Well, the only point,
I understand,
one
it's a
could make is
conduit financing, and
Well,
it
if-
could happen another way.
if KU was doing it, you wouldn't have
I
the question, you
understand,
wouldn't.
I understand. Just
It's a
bring
good
it-
point, you're right, technically, correct.
Okay.
Any other comments? Entertain a motion at this time to approve resolution number 7002.
So moved.
Moved Carter, second.
Second?
Dever. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you. And, Mr. Anderson, you're more than welcome to stay around for the rest of the meeting if you wish.
Happy
Can
trails.
sell them on it. Next item is item number 2, consider concurring with the Traffic Safety Commission recommendation to approve the request to establish no parking along the south side of Dakota Street from Louisiana Street east to the sidewalk and adopt on first reading ordinance number 8812, establishing no parking along the south side of Dakota Street from Louisiana east 80 feet, and it was approved by the Traffic Safety on a 9-0 vote. Staff?
Mayor and Commissioners, at the October Traffic Safety Commission meeting, they heard a request to prohibit parking along the south side of Dakota from Louisiana to Ohio. There were 2 separate requests made, and they also received an email from one of the adjacent property owners opposed to the request. There was no member of the public that spoke at the meeting, but one of the Traffic Safety Commissioners indicated that they were familiar with the concerns in that area and recommended some no parking, although they didn't want to do the whole block. So they scaled it back to what ended up being 80 feet from the intersection as their recommendation, to no parking on the south side from Louisiana east 80 feet. Then when this got to the City Commission the first time, a member of the public did appear before you and request that this item be continued until they had a chance to meet with other people in the neighborhood. That has taken place. The neighborhood association itself apparently was not interested in pursuing any discussion on this, but there are at least 2 residents that are opposed to the no parking restriction along that street. And that's why we are back here this evening. And I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
How, on Dakota Street, how far back from the intersection of Louisiana are you allowed to park right now?
Right now, you could park along the entire block, except by state law, you have to be 20 feet away from a crosswalk. There's a sidewalk there, and where that crosses the street would be an unmarked
So
crosswalk, so you'd have about 25 to 30 feet
a little more than the length of the car. of a
approximately.
big
That's
car.
correct.
And that's the same at Ohio Street as well?
Correct. Well, I'm not sure that there's even any sidewalks
I
down
guess
there,
that's-
so
yeah.
you could, in the absence of a sidewalk, then you can park right up to the corner, actually.
Okay. And how often is that street loaded with cars on both sides parked? Do you have any idea on that?
I'm not sure that it's ever actually loaded. There is intermittent parking along both sides of the street, but I don't believe it's consistent, throughout the day at all.
Now, we got a picture in the staff report that has 1 car on one side and 1 car on the other side.
Correct.
Other questions? All right, thank you. Public comments, please?
Carol Bowen, 403 Dakota Street. I would live 1 block to the east of the block in question. I would have gone to the Traffic Safety Commission, except I didn't know that there was an issue. And Channel 6 actually called me last night and asked me if I wanted to come down for an interview, and I said, it's just a short block. I don't understand why it would be an issue. It is for me because back in 2008 at our neighborhood picnic, we had 50 people. There are only 200 people 200 households in the neighborhood, so that was quite a turnout. The major topic of conversation was traffic problems in the neighborhood. So the board followed up, we identified where the problems were, and we worked with city staff to do some kind of a traffic study. We did put up some signs. We did have the option of putting a traffic circle at the intersection of, I'm assuming you have a map there, Ohio and Dakota Street, which is just inside from that block. But the neighbors did not want any yellow posts, and we let it drop. But it was a problem because of the speeding, not yielding, pedestrians, poor visibility. And so I'm asking tonight that the recommendation be denied because I think it would create more problems than it would solve. With parking on both sides, it's a local street, it's a local block, and the traffic has to negotiate a little. Not very often. I live on that street. I've gone to work on that street for decades. I'm sorry to say decades, but it was. And there just isn't a problem there. If a few people want to go faster and we accommodate that, we're creating more of a problem. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you. Other public comments? Okay, back to the City Commission for discussion.
So, from what I could see, you know, we're just talking about the south side of Dakota, and it's really, for the most part, the residents, the first resident on each side of Dakota that also, they're the ones whose driveways go out onto Louisiana that utilize that area. And the more I got to looking at it, especially if we're only talking about one side being no parking, that means that only the one neighbor really has an issue. If they park on the other side of the street versus their side, whichever side of the street you park on, your driver's door is on the inside, facing the street. So, and it's not a big street, so I'm gonna guess that they're probably, they can both still park on the street, and one needs to walk about 10 feet further to their car. You know, they can just park on the opposite side of the street. So if the safety issues are I mean, Carol's comments are kind of the opposite of what I was expecting though, because I thought this was coming from the neighborhood itself, and the comments there about safety and buses and the tightness of that turn suggested we need to do something. This just sounds like a reasonable way to address it if in fact there is a safety issue. And you know, when you buy on Louisiana, it's kind of like 27th. I mean, they've always had big traffic issues. I've always wondered how people back out into that each day. But it's not a bad thing. You know, walk an extra 8 or 10 feet for one house is all I see it really affecting.
Did the issue come to the traffic and safety? Come back up, please.
Came from the school bus people.
Did the issue come to remove parking on both sides of the street? Was that the first request?
No, I believe the request is to remove it from one side of the street, the south side of the
Okay.
street.
It was never an
But
issue.
it was the entire length of that block was the request.
So it was never a question of no parking on either side?
No, I don't believe so.
Thank you. Well, I've got 3 emails against it and 2 emails for it, so what do you do?
And just the one speaker against, so I don't know.
Coin. The points that the people make that want to leave it alone is that the parking does constrict it enough that it does keep fast driving from occurring, and certainly it does. And a couple of the emails have been pointed out that it's used as could be used as a cut through, and it speeds up. You're even going to increase the volume of traffic through there because pattern of least resistance is always where traffic heads to. So, but you know, I'm also surprised at the traffic and safety meeting, no one was there to talk about it.
Can I ask?
The request came from, First Student, the school bus people, is that correct? That was.
The request
the
came from what
request.
party, Mr. Woozle?
Didn't come from the organization, just from a person that works at that organization.
Oh.
They live around the corner there.
They do live in the neighborhood,
Yes.
okay.
Can I ask, follow up then, are we, it seems like a reasonable solution if there is a safety issue, I guess, is what I was looking at. But is there, or do we have any documentation of any accidents or anything there?
No documentation of any actual crashes, just the potential.
Because that's been that way forever.
Ever. I'll be honest with you, I don't see a reason to change. I mean, I really don't. In that area, I was looking at the traffic, got cars parked on either side. I guarantee you, we're not going fast through there. There may or may not be, you know, the vision problem, you know. Yeah, I didn't really say, I mean, you take your time, but, and you look, so I'd say leave it alone.
Yeah.
Unless we've got a problem with emergency vehicles, in which if we had that, we'd have heard about it. We don't have it. So I don't see a
So,
reason really.
if it ain't broke,
Yeah, don't let me.
entertain a motion.
Move to deny?
To deny?
That's correct. That's the motion.
Second.
Mayor, I would move to deny item 2.
Second.
Okay, the motion is to deny ordinance number 8812.
Correct.
Moved by Devers, second by
Establishing-
Amix,
Establishing the no parking.
which would establish the no
Okay,
parking.
got it, okay.
Okay, moved by Devers, second by Amix. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries 5-0 to deny ordinance number 8812. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda tonight is the receive report regarding curbside recycling proposals. Staff
Mayor,
presentation.
I'm going to start, and we've got other staff members, and I know that Commissioner Cromwell, who participated on our review committee, would also like to make some comments. First of all, our belief this evening is that we'll best be served by a good discussion from the commission and staff, from the proposers and the public about possible direction of proceeding. We don't have an ordinance, we don't have a contract for you all to adopt this evening. What we do have is the work of the review committee. You know, I want to back up just a little bit before we get to that. Then Mayor Cromwell convened a solid waste task force. We met for a few times for a lengthy period and came up with 2 robust recommendations. One was to move toward automation and containers in regards to our solid waste division. You all approved the recommendation in regards to that and the plan in regards to that last year, and we believe that we've successfully implemented that. As the February bills will be going out, those rate changes will be seen by community members. The second recommendation was to implement curbside recycling if it was economically feasible. And that as part of that recommendation, the direction was to send out a request for proposals to see if we can't get a good idea about how to proceed with curbside recycling. We've got a new state law that we're working our way through. We're kind of the lead in regards to that in the state as far as to working out a number of its ramifications. We have followed that law to date. We did receive the proposals that you see that are linked in Ed's memo, and then we did have a review committee where we looked at the proposals. We then engaged discussions with Deffenbaugh Industries, which was in our opinion, the clear non-local, non-city proposal in regards to the cost elements, to see if we could further understand that. As you can appreciate, there are a number of moving variables in regards to these proposals. We've got the cost, we've got the decision of whether it's weekly or bi-weekly. We've got the issue of what recyclables would be included in the stream. You've got a major policy issue in regards to what level of local control do you want? Do you want the city to be the provider of the service, or do you want it to simply be the one that is producing it through a third party? You've got the issue of the fact that we have a number of existing recyclers in the community that have provided recycling services to the community, and what would be the appropriate transition and perhaps transition costs in regards to that. So there are a number of variables that we have tried as a committee to get our hands around in regards to these proposals as well. So that's where we are at today. Ed Mullins has put together, I think, a good memo outlining that in a number of different issues. I'm gonna, if it's appropriate now, Mayor, I'm gonna ask him to come up and walk through that memo, keeping in mind that there are a number of choices and that there are assumptions built into that, as well as we try to evaluate the different proposals. And the only other thing I would do is just turn it over. Aaron, do you have any just general comments now, or do you want to wait till
I
later?
could wait and,
Okay.
hear the rest of this.
Thanks. Ed, thank you.
Mayor, City Commissioners, Ed Mullins, Finance Director. But tonight, I'm here actually representing the Curbside Recycling Committee, which Dave mentioned was made up of Commissioner Aaron Cromwell, Dave Porter, City Manager, myself as Finance Director, Joe Harkins, and Daniel Poole. And what we did is, as Dave mentioned, is review the responses that we received from the RFP, which was really four. We got Waste Management, Deffenbaugh, Ham, and then the City of Lawrence. There were some differences. With the City of Lawrence, it was basically for collection only, and then for Ham, it was to process the recycled materials only. Those materials would recycle what we call a MRF, which is materials recovery facility. So when you hear the word MRF, that's what that means, and basically that's, you know, that's where they're separating out. But what was included in the RFP was what we call a mandatory pay voluntary participation, single stream curbside recycling, which means that it's separated at the facility, it's separated at the MRF, it's not separated at the curb. Included in that proposal is basically providing the recycling collection services for all residential customers, both single family, multifamily, provided either on a weekly or bi-weekly schedule, provide, maintain the recycling containers, assist in educating the public about the program, and then developing some means of determining what kind of materials are being recycled, and then what kind of cost does the sale of those recycled materials provide. There was also some items on there about how they would work with the current haulers of the recycled materials, as well as how they provide services, municipal buildings, and at public events. The other thing, as Dave mentioned, there is a statute on the books now that kind of once you get the ball rolling, which is kind of an ordinance saying we want to do single-stream curbside recycling here in Lawrence, there's an 18-month period where everything's kind of status quo. So, you know, the way we're doing it now would be to continue that. Whatever means we choose to do in the future, you don't really start till 18 months after that ordinance is passed. What I'd like to do then is just kind of summarize the proposals. Again, this is summary. If you need some more information or moving too fast, you know, let me know if any questions you might have. But one of the proposals that we received was from Ham, and Ham would propose a MRF-only proposal. So whoever collected, if the city collected, then the recycled materials go to Ham. The benefit there is it's closer than any other MRFs that were proposed either by Deffenbaugh or Waste Management. We're talking about basically the intersection of K24 and K32, so just outside the city limits there. However, the difficulty with the Ham proposal is that in the proposal, they stated that it would be contingent upon a minimum annual volume of 13,800 tons. Currently, we're estimating probably somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 tons a year. For purposes of estimating the rebates, we were looking at 5,000 tons a year. So it's difficult right now to give them that consideration because we don't see that volume is happening at least immediately. Maybe down the road, and maybe that be something to consider in the future, but the committee was hesitant to do anything with it now because of that volume. With Deffenbaugh Industries, Deffenbaugh would actually do it one of two ways. They could collect and handle it in their own MRF, or the city could collect and process it through the Deffenbaugh MRF. And as Dave mentioned, at least initially, Deffenbaugh was requested to provide some more information, so some of their costs and some of their proposals changed from what they initially presented. The Deffenbaugh MRF is located about 32 miles from Lawrence, and it's important to consider, there's two components to cost. One is what it costs to actually pick things up, and then what it costs to actually process these at the MRF itself. For Deffenbaugh, they kind of had a couple proposals there depending upon whether they picked it up, whether the city picked it up, and whether it was weekly or bi-weekly. So things get kind of complicated there. But basically, what Deffenbaugh would do is if they picked it up on a weekly basis, they would cap their rebate at $10,000 per month. If the city picked it up, or if Deffenbaugh picked it up on a bi-weekly basis, there would not be a cap on the amount of rebate. And as we get into the cost of the different proposals, I'll kind of highlight what impact that means on the actual monthly rate a little bit later. Within Deffenbaugh's proposal, they would pick up municipal buildings, but services in the public spaces and public events would need to be negotiated. Waste Management presented a proposal where they would pick up and process at the MRF. The city could also process at the MRF if the city collected. However, their MRF is located at a further distance than what the Deffenbaugh MRF is. The Waste Management MRF is I think, been open for less than a year, and it's located in Topeka. One of the components that we requested in the RFP was to calculate what could be the annual rate increases. Deffenbaugh proposed an index. Waste Management actually proposed kind of a hard number of no more than 3% per year. So that was one of the nice things about their component, is that would be a known amount that would be increased for every year. Waste Management would provide service at municipal buildings at no charge, and again, anything in the public spaces would be negotiated. The City of Lawrence proposal was, as we mentioned, was for collection only. So as one of the options, if the city was selected to pick up the recycling at curbside, then a MRF option would need to be selected. At least from the committee's perspective, that would likely be the Deffenbaugh facility, because it is closer, and the way they price the component is there is no processing fee for the city to process the recycled materials there. The amount of rebate is a little bit less. Of course, it depends upon what that per ton sell price is, but the way that Deffenbaugh proposed theirs is that the risk of price fluctuations is more on Deffenbaugh and less on the city. And you can see that a little bit clearer maybe in the cost proposal as well. One of the things to keep in mind with the city collecting this, and more than likely any of these curbside recycling proposals, is that residential trash collection would move from a 3-day pickup to a 4-day pickup. So that would be from Tuesday through Friday. They would continue to pick up the yard waste on Monday, but Friday would be added as a pickup day. So obviously that's going to require resequencing, where the pickups are, and possibly for some customers what day their trash would be picked up. In the proposals, recycled materials would be picked up at the same day as the residential trash, but obviously if you did it bi-weekly, it's not gonna be, the same time. So sometimes it's gonna be every other week, but it would be the same day that the trash would be picked up. Then what I attempted to do on the table 1 that you saw was to try to do some kind of apples to apples comparison on the prices. And within table 1, I looked at what the proposed monthly 2014 rate would be, and included in that rate would be the processing fee at the MRF if there was a processing fee. And then in table 2, you can see the calculation I try to do for the annual rate increases, which basically is trying to look at a 5-year average of either the index that was included in the proposal, or in the case of the city, what increases the residential trash has experienced the last 5 years, or in the case of waste management, it was just a flat 3%. So in addition then to what we looked at as the monthly 2014 rate, I also tried to project what that 2021 rate could be, because we're looking at a 7-year commitment. So during that 7-year period of time, to give you an idea at the end of that period, what those rates may be like. The other column tries to take into account the rebate. One of the concerns about the rebate is that that's going to fluctuate depending upon the market value of those recycled materials. And it can fluctuate. It's shown to fluctuate. In order to try to calculate what that value was, again, I looked at what would be anticipated to be our waste stream component, the amount of plastics, the amount of aluminum, the amount of newsprint, and looked at a range of the high-low volumes of those, and then basically took an average of that high-low over the last 5 years. I came up then with the price of $118 per ton. That's not too far off from where we are in the market right now, but again, depending upon when that market, when you look at that market and, what kind of demand's out there, you can see some fluctuation there. So the committee was somewhat hesitant to apply the anticipated or projected rebate to the monthly rate that would be charged, because that's going to be needed, more a fixed amount. So initially we looked at maybe doing a 50-50 share between reducing that and basically putting it as just another revenue item. It could be used for equipment replacement, other needs within the solid waste department. But when Deffenbaugh sort of capped their rate at $120,000, and if I tried to split that evenly, say between waste management, where their potential rebate is in the neighborhood of, I think, $400,000, it really skewed the results. So then what I tried to do was say, okay, the amount of rebate the city would retain would be 50% of that $120,000, which is $60,000. And that equates to about 15 cents a month per residential customer. That doesn't mean that needs to be the rates that you set. That's just the logic that I used to try to make sure that when I looked at Deffenbaugh Waste Management and the city combinations, that I'm kind of looking at the same amount of rebate being credited back to the residential monthly charge and retained by the city. Hopefully that's kind of the best way to do it, at least for a comparative basis. And then in addition, by moving from a 3-day residential trash pickup to a 4-day, the Public Works Department estimates that would reduce their rates by 66 cents a month to the residential customer. So I identified that savings again as reducing the monthly charge on the recycling side. Doesn't have to be that way. You can also, and you can bill this either one bill, one line item, or 2 line items, but there is a savings for moving from the 3-day to the 4-day pickup. If you were to reduce the rate for the curbside recycling, that's in the last column. On the waste, on the Deffenbaugh side, it's not showing up on the waste management side because at least at the present time, we don't have a 4-day pickup week proposal from them. And if you look at that, the rate for the 4-day biweekly would be $2.05. The rate for the 4-day weekly pickup would be $3.51. That compares to the city Lawrence-Deffenbaugh combination of $2.19 on a 4-day biweekly and $3.50 on the 4-day weekly. So very close. As Commissioner Cromwell highlights in his summary, it sort of comes down to then the trade-off between control and risk. Obviously, you have more control if the city would collect it, but you have more risk in terms of liability issues and maybe cost of fuel and future rate increases on the city side. As also highlighted, so that's sort of the cost summary. As Dave mentioned, when the city commission looks at some decision options, it's weekly or bi-weekly pickup, and there's certainly some cost considerations to that, as well as what's better for the public, or what may or may not encourage more recycling of the materials, or what is easier for the customer to do. Both the Public Works Department and Commissioner Cromwell would represent, or we're at least recommending initially a bi-weekly pickup, and Public Works would recommend that be in a 95-gallon cart. There's also a requirement within the statute to have some kind of plan for dealing with the current small hauler providers. And within my memorandum there in the decision option sections, I sort of highlighted some possible options there. The Public Works Department estimates that if the current small haulers would continue and the city would pick up the difference in the rates from what they're charging the customers now to what some of these rates are being proposed, that could be around $135,000 a year. So I mean that's a possibility to subsidize the small haulers or not do anything with the small haulers. Those are sort of the two extremes. And then looking at which provider to select, whether it's going to be the city Deffenbaugh combination, a Deffenbaugh only combination. Those are the parent low-cost options right now. And then if the city were selected to pick it up, what MRF they would use. And right now, the recommendation is for the Deffenbaugh MRF. One other consideration with the current landfill cost, Ham has stated that if we don't use the Ham MRF option, the price of landfilling solid waste would increase by $1 per ton for every 5,000 ton decrease in volume. So we estimated that, $1 a ton for 5,000 tons would be approximately $55,000 per year. But on the other side of it, we would also have about $126,000 savings in landfill. So even with that additional charge, there would be a net savings to the city of approximately $71,000 a year based on our projections. So with that, I would be glad to attempt to answer any questions.
Pretty self-explanatory. That's maybe why
You want to go ahead with your?
that's maybe why I took the.
Why don't you go ahead and go through your memo that you wrote?
Yeah, I took the step of, and I guess I'll start off appreciating Ed's work and all city staff here that's worked on it, and particularly those, Joe Harkins and Dan Poole for putting together their work on this. Again, after, the Solid Waste Task Force, we had about 1,500 meetings with that, and then to go ahead and say, hey, I'm gonna do a little bit more work on this is a great testament to the commitment, and I thank you for that. Yeah, going through, you know, again, there's a lot to this. You know, in my memo, I outlined, you know, really starting out why we're wanting to do this, the values that we're trying to get at. Those are more aptly explained in the, you know, in the Solid Waste Task Force report. We go through that quite a bit. So you can see that. The fact of the matter is, at that time, we weren't sure how much this was going to cost. And so that was a big concern. While serving, you know, in that task force, you know, the feedback that from the community, a lot of the feedback on this is, hey, that sounds great, as long as it doesn't cost too much. And which, I mean, yeah, of course that's the way it's gonna be, no matter, you know, I would agree with that, of course. But and I think to that, you know, over the past couple of months, you know, I've been thinking really, you know, I'd really like to do a weekly collection of the recycling, but looking at the prices and considering the input from all the folks out there, I think that a bi-weekly or every other week collection of recycling would make the most sense. And so those are the options that I highlighted in my memo, and that I would be advocating for at this time. Although I don't think that, you know, I think that we probably would capture a little bit more recycled materials by putting it out every week, make it a little bit more convenient. I said repeatedly at different meetings that I wouldn't be able to remember what week my recycling was going to go out, and so I don't know. We'll have to, you know, we would have to manage that communication, and we're pretty good at it. And I don't know, maybe somebody could be assigned to remind me every week when it was time to get my recycling out. I don't know. Ed'll do that, great. The other thing about that too is, you know, and I had a number of folks who suggested, you know, hey, every other week means every other week we've got, you know, half as many trucks driving up and down the roads too. And so if we you know, make the container larger, do every other week. And I started thinking about and watching what I was doing in my bin, and yeah, I fill the bin up every week, and so it'd be hard. But then I look at, I'm not really breaking down anything, so I know if I try harder that I can fit it everything into a 95-gallon every other week. You know, the point really is more diversion than recycling anyway, so or just avoiding the landfill. I don't want to start rambling on here, but one thing too, you know, when we're looking at, you know, again, Tam was talking about, you know, raising our landfill rates if we don't use them. That's, I think, you know, would happen anyway. They require a certain volume to do a certain amount of business, and it's not. It's not a. I don't think we should interpret that as a you know, either I'm going to pitch or I'm taking my ball and going home, sort of a thing. It's more, you know, we need a certain amount of volume in order to do a business, and the reality is we save more than that by recycling. By diverting that much, by recycling that material, our rate goes up $1, but we save $1.50, and so that's a good thing overall. We're going to hear a little bit more, I'm sure, from the folks who put these proposals out, and so I'm anxious to hear, you know, what more that they have to say. My memo outlines what I believe are, you know, would be a good value at this point in time. I like the option. I think having the city collect gives us more options in the future, where we're going to send the materials to, what we're going to do, how exactly the collection is going to look like. You know, again, I'd like to hear everybody's feedback on that first, and discussions before, you know, making any decision on that. I understand Ham may have some ideas of being able to get that volume number that Ed had talked about. They need a certain amount of volume as far as the recyclables coming in to make it a viable enterprise. They have to invest in a lot of equipment, and if they're not getting the material, then it's not going to be lucrative for them to go into this. And so they required an amount that we were estimating was maybe about twice what we could do right off the bat. those numbers are gonna be a little, we're not quite sure what those numbers really are gonna be. I think that we probably are gonna do a little bit better than that, but probably not right off the get-go. And so, but Ham may have an ability to work with the volume, and so that's something that we'll wanna hear more on, as we go forward. Again, I think at this point in time, I'd really like to hear the responses from the folks and get the public comment, and then we'll go back at it, and there'll be other questions and comments, and we'll go from there.
I've got one question for whoever wants to answer it. And it is apparent to me we're not talking about glass being recycled. Is that correct?
Proposals differ. For Deffenbaugh, they don't want glass recycling. Ham's proposal, I think, indicates that they would consider it at their facility, separated. Waste Management indicates that they can take it.
And the city of Lawrence?
I believe that's accurate. City of Lawrence, our proposal would not recycle it at the curbside, but would continue with what we've got now with the Ripple glass arrangement.
Seems like, to me, because I go look at these glass bins, and there's a lot of glass out there. And it's heavy.
It's heavy.
It's heavy, and I don't know how you determine how much glass gets thrown away if you don't recycle it at the curb, but you gotta imagine it's more than if you did recycle it. And it's, I mean, to me, it seems like to go with, obviously I don't know who has what included in their bid, their proposal, but to move forward without a glass option in it seems like it's a little short-sighted if we're going through all this to try and recycle all that stuff. But Aaron, you've worked on that, so.
Yeah, the problem with, and Waste Management's proposal does include glass in their proposal as far as their recycling. They do a single stream glass recovery system. The problem industry-wide is that means that you're throwing away more material is the general rule on that. The glass gets contaminated with other materials and ends up contaminating paper. So a lot of folks don't want the paper. The glass folks don't like glass that's been mixed in with everything else. They like it separate. So a lot of times communities with a curbside glass system will do that as a separate bin next to the other stuff. You have your mixed and then your glass
And
bin.
how does that work on the trucks that pick it up? Do they have to have a separate?
It's a separate truck.
Oh,
Yeah, that's why it's challenging. The Ripple model that we've got right now, where we've got the big purple bins around town, has been working pretty well. We're diverting a lot of tonnage that
Yeah.
way.
For all the people who voluntarily cart the stuff over there, so,
Correct.
Okay, let's go ahead and open it up to public comment at this time.
I would like to compliment the city on what has happened
Would
so
you please
far.
state your name again, please?
I'm sorry, Carol Bowen, 403 Dakota Street.
Thank you.
I would like to compliment the city. I think so far we've done a good job. We've kept the rates down. A little bit of adjustment's not going to kill us. As far as the glass, if you look around you at home, you don't have very much glass anymore. Just try to find a big jar for paint thinner. Everything's plastic now. So it may not be an issue for very much longer. I guess my big concern is local control and small businesses, small local businesses. I don't know much about the trash collection system here, especially the recycling, but I do know that there are some businesses. I would hate to force them out. We're in a political season again, and we know that we're going to hear small businesses are the backbone of our community. Yet every time we have a choice, for some reason or another, it might be cost or whatever, we slight the small businesses. If there's any way to contract them, keep them going as a priority, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Good thoughts, thank you. Comments?
My name is Laura Ruth, again, speaking as an individual tonight. I'd just like to thank Commissioner Cromwell for championing this issue. When I moved to Lawrence about 10 years ago, this was my #1 priority. And I'm really proud and pleased to see how far we've come. And I extend my gratitude to staff because I know that they worked really hard, as did the folks on the Solid Waste Task Force. I can't help you make a decision between vendors, but as a person who's worked in solid waste for a long time, I'll say 2 things. Put or pay contracts make me really nervous. In the industry, that can be very problematic. Where I'm most familiar with it is on the East Coast, you have put or pay contracts where a community binds itself to a facility, and then if they can't come up with the volume, there's a penalty. So I would, if that's something you want to go for, just be real careful, because that historically has been problematic in some places, particularly those that have incinerators. The other issue, glass, is a challenge, and I'm confident that staff and whatever vendor we end up working with can help us address that. But I would encourage you not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't let the issue of glass stop you from doing something that is so overdue and so needed in this community. So, thanks.
Thank you. Other comments?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Brian Nuppel. I am the Public Sector Solutions Representative for Waste Management of Kansas. And first I wanted to say thank you to the city personnel and the committee that put together the RFP for the single stream recycling program. They did an excellent job laying out the groundwork for what needed to go in the RFP, as well as adhering to the stringent timelines put in place by the state laws governing this whole process. They've done an excellent job laying that all out, as well as the review of the proposals that Mr. Mullins and Mr. Cromwell have laid out to us all here together. Waste Management has been working for the past several months structuring our RFP to the hopes and desires of what the city had in mind when it comes to single stream recycling. And in our world, that does include glass. It could be argued either way, whether glass contaminates fibers or fibers contaminates the glass. Being the world's largest residential recycler, Waste Management has a solution for handling that glass problem. There's third-party suppliers out there who will take that glass, further refine it to get it to that clean status that the end glass bottle producer wants in the end. So there's a solution for that contaminated glass issue that you brought up. As Mr. Mullins had presented, the commissioners have a huge amount of information in front of you to try to digest. And you're comparing apples and oranges. All the different options available to you, it's going to be hard for anyone to try to decipher that. But what we're asking the commission to do is to not make a decision at this point based on the information you have. You've already begun negotiations with one hauler. Under the RFP process, you have the right to negotiate with all haulers to get the best rate for the city and the residents. So if you've done it for one, you can do it with all. And then you can use those rates back and forth against each other to get the best rate possible. Finally, I guess I want to stress the point that the lowest rate isn't always the most important. Having the best rate for the services that are being provided is what's going to be the overall deciding factor. If ours does include glass, you no longer have that separate glass collection program that's needed with other options out there. We can provide that all as one lump sum service provision for the city. So I guess another thing we'd like to offer is at the time of the RFP, we did not know the city was going to a 4-day collection program or considering a 4-day collection program for the trash. We did not submit a 4-day collection proposal in our RFP. We'd like to have the opportunity to submit a 4-day collection proposal and rates to correspond to that 4-day collection, because that will have an impact on our numbers as well. So I ask for your consideration in those matters.
Okay, a couple questions here. So you're saying that now that everyone's laid down their cards, for each person to have an opportunity to negotiate their card to a better position.
Correct.
Okay. Secondly, is with glass, if I put glass out at my curb outside of my home, how do you handle it if you're the recycler?
Under our single stream recycling program, all the materials collected in that one bin is taken to our recycling facility where it's sorted. Goes through a series of sorting machines, conveyor belts, and then ultimately hand sorting of the end product as well. But all
So
those materials are
You have
brought
one
to the
bin,
facility together.
everything goes in there, one
bin,
truck,
everything goes in.
everything goes away from my house in one truck.
Correct. And as you have seen, the amount of glass that you see at the drop-off sites, currently in the city of Lawrence, what is it? 20% of the residents are with a current recycling program, under a current recycling program, 20, 25%. So, and that is a program that typically does not include glass. So those same people who have signed up and are paying a premium rate for recycling service now are probably those same people who are taking the glass to the drop-off. So that leaves 75% of the population out there who's probably throwing that glass right in their trash. We could capture that volume.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you.
Hugh, go ahead.
I did have one. Looking at Mr. Mullins kind of breaking the proposals down for us, his presentations, the tables, et cetera, did you had enough time to review, and do you
Yes,
feel
I
like
did.
that's a accurate comparison? I agree, first of all, everybody should be able to get back to a 4-day proposal, and so we can get at least closer to apples now that we're a little further along. And we should keep negotiating, and the lowest price isn't the single determining factor. So I hear a lot of what you're saying there. But I was just curious, is there anything that jumped out at you of his breakdown of the proposals?
No, I
Okay.
thought he did an excellent job. The numbers were very straightforward. It's transparent as to how all the formulas worked.
Great.
Yeah, it purely comes down to the composition of the materials in the end of how the rebates are gonna work.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Yeah, Brian, thanks for responding and for being here tonight. Everyone in the industry, the feedback we've gotten is glass and single stream is not good because you end up with a lot more waste, a lot more of the recycled material ends up being landfilled eventually. What's your response to that?
Well, I guess the transparency is going to be the biggest thing. Allowing the city staff, commissioners to come out to our recycling facility, audit loads, see the amount of residuals that we're taking. Residuals are the waste product of the recycling stream. And see what the amount of residuals we're taking out of the recycling stream. If glass is contaminating more than what it should be, then something's wrong with our sorting process. We collect glass at almost every one of our MRFs across the country. In Iowa, we don't have a MRF, but we're taking glass to our recycling partner there. And in fact, he's kind of disappointed because in Iowa, we have a bottle bill, so those bottles are worth a nickel apiece. He would like to see more glass, more aluminum in the recycling stream, but he doesn't get that material because everybody's taking it back to the stores for that nickel deposit.
So the way to recycle beer bottles is to put a deposit on.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
There's an idea.
Like Columbia.
Then all you have to do is leave it out by the curb and someone will
right
pick
away.
it up.
Your neighbor.
It's true.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any other comments, questions for Waste Management? Thank you, Brian.
Jim Mullins, Lawrence, I live at Jonathan Drive, Lawrence. I was not a member of the Solid Waste Task Force, but I attended a great number of those meetings. Plus, I did a great number of hours, and I mean hours, of research from cities and counties and entities across the country. And I'm not, I don't work for Waste Connections. Is that Waste Management or Waste Connection? Waste Connection, Waste Management. But the thing about it is what they do. Single stream is really what you should be doing. And if you've got vendors like Ham and Deffenbaugh that can't handle the glass, then they either need to get with the program, because that's where most of the recycling is going, is single stream across the country, okay? I disagree with Commissioner Cromwell on that. But the idea of it is that the main thing that's objective to me is it is a mandatory voluntary participation. I think it should be a voluntary. In other words, if I don't want to particularly recycle, that's my choice. But now, the way this is read and the way you're trying to do it is that you're going to mandate, you still don't have to recycle, but you're going to pay for it. And that's just on the back of the individual to carry the program. That's how you can make it so it pays, keep the price down. But I disagree wholeheartedly that I should have to pay for this thing if I choose not to recycle. Now, is recycling good? Yes, it is. I agree. And I'm not saying I won't. But what I'm sharing with you is I think individual rights is paramount here about what we can and cannot do and not be forced to do these things. So anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Scott White. I live at 733 Tennessee Street. I'm currently the chair of the Lawrence Sustainability Advisory Board. But I'm here tonight speaking solely as an individual. The SAB was unable to move fast enough after learning this was going to be on the agenda tonight to convene a meeting to discuss, though we would like to submit formal comments in the future as this process moves along. I know they have in the past, just as the details of all this are emerging. I'm sure the SAB will want to act in their role, fulfill their advisory role in this matter. But as a private citizen, I am glad you're considering curbside recycling. I think it's long overdue in Lawrence. My family has recycled for as long as we've been here, about 15 years. And while our options have gotten easier, with vendors coming to the door, I still think there's a lot of waste recycling that ends up in the waste stream that could be captured and, regardless of the details of the competing bids you've had, I strongly encourage you first to adopt that you're going to move forward with this, because I think it would be the best choice for Lawrence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Mike Claggett. I'm with Deffenbaugh Industries, and I would like to address a couple of issues, if I might. One had to do with the rebate cap, which is it's really not a cap. It's just if we were to provide the weekly collection service, the rebate would be provided to the city in the amount of $10,000 a month. It's not up to that amount. It is that amount. So it's not capped. In other words, there's nothing that would be paid in a lesser amount than that $10,000. On an every other week collection basis, there is no limit on the amount that would be rebated to the city. And based on what we think just generally what we think the tonnages could be, you're probably looking at somewhere between $22,000, $25,000 a month on a rebate on today's values. Obviously, these are commodities, and as such, they move around quite a bit. So there are times when it could be greater than that, and there's times when it could be lesser than that. Obviously, if we were going to do the collection piece, whether every other week or weekly, we would be the ones who would be providing the carts, the assembly and distribution of the carts, the maintenance of the carts, that sort of thing. And Then the other issue as regards glass, I know we beat around glass quite a bit. And I don't know that I want to address the issue of cross-contamination. I mean, there's two sides to that discussion. And I'm happy to offer you what we've seen. But we have been a partner of the Ripple Glass program since its inception. And we have committed to work with Ripple, not only in the Kansas City marketplace, but in the Lawrence marketplace, in an effort to not only collect glass that's delivered by the residents to the various drop-off locations, but we've also implemented programs for bars and restaurants, and we've made the commitment to the Ripple Glass people that we would continue those efforts here in the city of Lawrence. So with that, if there are any questions of us, I'm happy to try and answer them.
I have a question for you. So in the areas where you work, you don't pick up curbside glass with recycling?
That is correct. Now, having said that, excuse me, it's still single stream collection. So you collect all the recyclables from one container. That glass is not included in that doesn't make it anything other than it's still single stream commingled collection. But no, we do not take glass in the program.
Okay. Mike?
Mike, can you tell us what you might have estimated the cost for carts and rolling out the program full scale in Lawrence,
I
Kansas?
think with excuse me, with the assembly and distribution on the carts, I think our calculation was something in the neighborhood of $1.5 million.
Okay. And then when you talked about your relationships that you have here already, especially with Ripple, how would you see, first of all, can Deffenbaugh provide a true, and I say all possible recyclable materials, including glass? I know you opt not to offer that now, but is that something that you could offer, or is your MRF not set up to handle glass in a single stream?
It is not set up to deal with glass right now as part of the commingled stream. That's not to say that somewhere down the road it may be or it could be. Our experience with glass has been one of the issue of cross-contamination. And I think irrespective, I think when we talk to our buyers, particularly the fiber buyers, newspaper, corrugated, that sort of thing, our buyers prefer that we don't have glass as part of our single stream mix because small pieces of glass get into the fibers. Now, having, and I know there are programs that do take glass, and I've seen them. Some work better than others, but so far we've decided not to go that route.
Now, is that going to affect, no matter what the decisions here are, can you tell us how, I know Deffenbaugh provides drop-off collection dumpsters at schools and other places in the community.
Yes.
Do you see that impacted at all? Obviously, there would not be the market if we were voluntarily, but charging for recycling services in the community. How do you see that program changing?
And that's a good question, Commissioner. I think the more curbside becomes a mainstream service in the community, it's clearly easier for people to put their materials out in front of their house at the curbside than it is to take them to the schools and churches. However, a lot of these people who have kids in schools and attend their churches on a weekly basis will still continue to take their materials there. So while they may see some decrease in the volumes, I don't know that it'll be significant in nature.
Especially if you got one container, you got to hold it for 2 weeks, and you've got lots of cardboard and lots of large packaging items. I just was curious. Somebody had asked me that question, and I thought it might still work, but I didn't know for sure.
The weekly versus every other week discussion, I mean, Kansas City, Missouri first implemented their program on an every other week basis using 18-gallon recycling bins. You know,
It's not working.
it wasn't ideal. I have a 65-gallon cart that I use at my house, and it's a weekly collection. It's just about perfect. City of Olathe has an every other week collection with a 95-gallon bin, and they are rightfully very proud of their program. It works quite well. So the issue as to whether or not you're apt to remember what day, you know, I mean, obviously there's ways to communicate into the community, the collection weeks for the various residents. But I get it. I mean, I understand that weekly is easier to remember. I mean, I understand that.
Thank you for letting me ask him those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Charlie Sedlock, Director of Ham Waste Services. Mayor, members of the commission, thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. Many thanks to the staff, to the selection and review committee. You know, it's a lot of work to put these things together, but it is a lot of work on their shoulders to get through these and analyze these, and they're not all the same. Let me address how we would handle glass. Our base proposal does not have glass in it, but we've allowed in the proposal that if it's a desire of the city for us to do that, since we're designing a brand new system, we can plug and play and add glass to it. It does add a couple more dollars to pull that out to ensure that the fibers and everything are clean. We can do that. That's the beauty of our proposal, is that it in essence is a repurposing of an older facility, but with all new equipment and a completely new sorting line. So if glass is important to the city, we can do that. If not, Mike Utz and Ripple has done a fantastic job. We're big fans of Ripple too. We also think that's an option. And in our base bid, there would be a Ripple container at our facilities, and we would continue to push Ripple throughout the city to just further what they're doing already. We also, on the glass side, right now what you have in terms of a landing zone transfer point at farmland, we'll have plenty of room on our proposed site to just move that over there to free up farmland for other things. Let me talk about the minimum tonnage that we're proposing and the thoughts behind that and some options. We're proposing the minimum tonnage because we believe Lawrence is starting this arc of a story where they're going to end up where Boulder, where San Francisco, where Burlington, Vermont already is, and they will have single stream at the curb for your residents. They'll have all of your multifamily. You will launch into commercial single stream for all of your businesses. You'll coordinate and dovetail with KU on game nights like tonight with all the students. You'll coordinate with Memorial Stadium. You'll coordinate with Rock Chalk Park. And all of a sudden this 1,150 tons a month is not an issue at all. So if there's concern on that, Ham is willing to essentially forego that requirement. We think you're going to be there in 2 to 3 years anyway. We can scale back our equipment, put in the bones of the equipment that we wanted, the backbone, maybe not put on a couple bells and whistles that we were hoping to right up front, and we can work with you on those tons. Having a local option is going to be the way that the City of Lawrence, that KU, that the Chamber of Commerce, that the residents ultimately want to go. Ours is different from the others in that we can offer C&D recycling, which is a whole nother block of probably 5,000 to 10,000 tons to divert from the landfill. We have, room for e-waste processing. We have room for food waste processing. All these plums or fruits that are right around the corner for the city that they're going to want to look at, that some of these other cities are already pushing at. The ones that are 50, 70, diversion from their landfill. You have to have a local option for that, not 32, not 40 miles away, 6 miles away from downtown, 3 miles away from the city limits. In terms of compliance with Horizon 2020, SAB, Peak Oil, your own sustainability staff. There's one proposal that meets all those. It's ours. It's a local one. It's a local one that's gonna keep jobs here. It's gonna add 15 to 20 jobs. It's gonna be a lot of money spent here. It's gonna keep it in Lawrence. Now, in terms of small businesses, HAM has always operated as an independent merchant platform in terms of disposal. We're open to anybody and everybody that wants to come into our facility. Whether it's Jeff's, home recycling, sunflower recycling, cans for the community. We're open to all those folks to offer them high rebates to come in and use our facility and to improve or continue with their businesses. We've talked with all of them. They're all interested. In terms of the C&D operation that we can do at the site, all the materials of value would go back to Habitat Restore locally in Lawrence to their facility. In terms of all of the public materials, all the outreach that would be designed, the websites and everything, would all be done by KU. We would utilize Studio 804 and those folks to help repurpose this building. Jobs, money, local back into the community here. You know, if you have any further questions, I'm happy to answer them tonight. Everybody knows probably how to get a hold of me at HAMS. Be happy to talk to you more about this. We've been partners with the city for a long, long time, and we want to continue to be partners with the city to help them reach the goals they want to get to.
Questions? You?
I missed, you said, talked about repurposing a building?
Yes.
KU, what was that again?
The building we're proposing is the old Lacey Steel building.
Oh, okay.
And so we're talking about repurposing and creating a real bright spot there and, you know, changing the look of it, but also the purpose of it and really creating some value for the community there. Also a place for public interaction in terms of field trips, kids, teachers, the whole 9 yards there. That's not going to happen and going to the other cities. They're just too far away.
Just one more follow-up. If, then you would need to tweak, I guess everybody would need to tweak proposals if we wanted to go that route and look at what these rates would be without minimum tonnage, if there's an impact, or if you're just gonna do that through
And I think
your
we
own
were
cost
the only one
savings.
that had that, so we could do that.
Everybody, I guess we'll need to get back to you on what other things we'd like to, if we wanted everybody to re-propose, but it was that and, what was the?
3-day.
Yes, 4-day versus 3-day. About how long would you estimate to come back with new proposals?
We could have ours ready, and if you guys shoot us an email or whatever, give us a week and we'll have it turned back to you. You might want to ask them, but that's our feeling is we could turn things back quickly to the city.
Okay, thank you.
I've got another question for you. Do you or anyone else in the room who has knowledge of solid waste know what percentage of an average family's trash is glass? And then, of course, when you're talking about minimum tonnage, glass is heavy. And so
It is.
you can start to pick up a good percentage of the glass, then you build your tonnage.
Exactly.
Do you have any idea what that number might be?
We don't operate a facility. These guys might be able to speak to it better. From the studies we've seen, it's a few percent by volume, by airspace, but by weight, it's a higher percent. I can't tell you what that is, but it is a weight. There is a weight aspect to that.
Right.
That is shrewd of you to pick up on that.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Mike?
Just a question real quick, and Charlie, this may be for you, and Mike, you may want to address this also. I want to make sure that I'm clear on this. As we talk about maybe having, you know, these RFPs relooked by staff and Aaron, others involved with this, if we make glass a requirement, if we make glass a requirement as, you know, being picked up as a single stream, would Deffenbaugh not be able to do this or choose not to go any farther with this? That would be a question, I guess, for Mike at this point, not you, Charlie. Just want to make sure I understand this. If we just lost somebody, I guess I want to know.
Any other questions for me?
I'm sorry.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As regards making it a requirement, I mean, I guess that's one of those things we would just have to take another look at. So I wouldn't sit here tonight and tell you that we would not do it, but it would probably affect how we submitted a second proposal. As regards to your first question about, was it you, Mr. Mayor, that had the question about how much?
What percentage of glass is in an average family's trash?
I think currently the numbers that we have seen glass would represent approximately 11%. But as the lady in the audience pointed out earlier, that number is tending downward.
Is that by weight or by volume?
By weight.
Well, in Lawrence, according to the city clerk's report tonight, we have 132 drinking establishments. That's a fair number.
Only?
11, well, we've got more places in case you can't get in one of those. 11
Registered.
11 on-premise locations, 26 liquor stores, and 35 cereal malt beverage stores, which are your grocery stores, for a total of 204 dispensaries of entertainment. So that is a lot of glass if everybody there is staying alive. So
I would share with you
well, other areas may be trending down. I'm not so sure that Lawrence is in that.
I would share this with you as regards glass and how and what it does as you determine a composite per ton value for all materials that you collect, is that glass reduces that composite value just because, well,
you don't get much for it.
Exactly. So it does have that drawback as well.
City Manager?
I know that Aaron is familiar with this, and Mike and Tom can speak to this as well. In my conversations with the management of Ripple Glass, one of the things that they want to emphasize, and I think it's part of this discussion, but I want to just say this, is that if we really want glass to be recycled, the best way to do that is to have it separate. Because when it is commingled, the glass value is greatly diminished. So that's at least what Ripple Glass has indicated. And I think, Aaron, that's what they've advised us as well.
They've communicated that to me as far as from their ability to use it. They don't have the ability to use it unless, I mean, other people have an ability to use it, but from their point of view, they need a very clean product for the insulation that they end up doing. So that's.
Next speaker, please.
My name is Daniel Poole. I live at 821 Ohio. Mayor and Commissioners, thank you very much for taking up this issue. I know it's difficult. I'm glad I'm not going to be making the decision. I am on the Sustainability Advisory Board for the city, and I was on the Solid Waste Task Force, and I cannot speak for them, but I'll say some things, some points that come up for me when I think about this issue and what we, after studying this, what came up. One, and always the first one for me, is that the city's solid waste division has gotten numbers of approval from the citizens of Lawrence that are just almost, they hit a home run with this. It's one of our best services that we provide to our citizens. And in that light, I would say if the city does become the collector, they will do an excellent job, as they already do, with our trash collection. So that's something to think about. And I would also have you look at a survey that was taken a number of years back about how important recycling is to the city of Lawrence. And it was, I don't know the numbers exactly, but it was well over 70% of the people that responded said recycling is very important to them. And that survey, you can look at it, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it actually gave price points at which people would participate. We're well within those numbers that these RFPs have shown. Another thing I'd like to say is, if the city does become the collector, we have to wait 18 months to implement our program, right? Because of the private haulers. So one of the things that also jumped out at us on the solid waste task force is one of the private haulers in the city is Deffenbaugh. Their RFP would not require that 18-month wait. And if you think about the materials that can be recovered in that period of time, that's a fairly significant thing to think about. Kind of gives them a foot in the door in a way. Another thing that jumps out for me is that Hams has been such a good partner for the city for years, and much to my chagrin as a member of the SAB, they've kept our tonnage rates so low for so many years. They probably saved this municipality many, many thousands of dollars over the years. That's something to look at. If there's a possibility of having a material recovery facility within 3 miles of the city limit, that's got to be weighted pretty heavily. And other than that, I just say thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. City Manager?
Mayor, I'd like, Tony, if you want to speak to this as well, it's our understanding of the state law that if the city selected a third party to do recycling curbside operations, and we did that, we adopted the ordinance under the state law, we'd still have that 18-month waiting period. Wouldn't preclude Deffenbaugh from staying here and announcing that they're staying here and that they're going to be the city's selected vendor for all of that. But we wouldn't be able to move any more quickly because we have selected them. That's at least our understanding.
Well, and wouldn't we have to retain the people who are in business now? And isn't that the reason for the 18-month window, is the recyclers who are in business now, gives them a chance to plan what they're going to do for the future?
Correct. It gives them 18 months to know that they would no longer be in that business if that's the decision that you make, and that's how you decide to transition them. That's correct.
I was just curious if staff knows of the survey that speakers was talking about, the citizen survey?
That is the citizen survey that we have periodically conducted that gives the city sanitation division high marks in.
Same survey, okay.
That's one of the issues we tried to outline about the local control and the excellent service we think that we provide.
Great, thanks.
Other comments? Other public comments? Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back and have a discussion.
I don't know how to load it up again. Yeah, I just have to demolition and renovation. We never do this anymore. So. You gotta stay in the game.
Okay, we're back after a short break, and we've had the public commentary, so it's up for commission discussion and direction of staff. So who'd ever like to jump in with the roadmap of where we're going with this, be my guest. Be my guest.
I mean, I think at this point in time, it's pretty clear that we'd kind of like to see some more information to you know, right now it's not really apples and apples or apples and oranges, but maybe apples and some sort of car. We want to at least be speaking fruit exclusively. So, you know, if we had a little bit of time and
Spoken like a true engineer.
yeah, in the engineer mode, I won't be able to speak at all. But I think it's good to have a chance to negotiate a little bit more and have give opportunity to refine a little bit more folks and I would propose that we ask them to focus specifically on a 4-day trash pickup schedule bi-weekly, so that we have some, you know, we narrow this down to a more refined and hopefully that we can tighten up those and also to have them take a look at you know, Waste Management, Deffenbaugh, and HAM all look at the MRF proposals as well, and taking a look at that. Looks like there's room for some further refinements probably on everybody's part that we can kind of get on the same page with that, and maybe have a little bit more glass discussion as well. I think that could be an important component. But I would direct staff to have those discussions and bring it back to us here in a couple of weeks.
Well, there's, yeah, I like that. Seems like when one of the gentlemen from one of the companies, I don't recall which one it was, said, let us, I guess it was HAM, let us come back to you with a little bit of a refurbished kind of option here, some options. Now that everyone knows who's proposing what, they've got an opportunity to enhance their own offering or round it off a little bit. I would like to see us with perhaps 2 options, one with glass and one without glass. Certainly I'm not going to force the issue. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it can work, I think it's worth looking into, and that's what we're doing right now, is spending some time looking at all the options to see which way the best way for the city is. So I like that. We have not had a discussion tonight about, maybe it's premature, I'm not sure, what to do with our existing people who are involved in the industry in terms of independent collectors, recyclers, and that needs to happen at some time. Mike, you wanted to make a comment?
I was just going to make a comment about the existing recycling companies that we have. You know, these guys really stepped up during a time that the city, you know, was not in the recycling business, and you know, I think that you know, we need to have some type of program in place that is either going to allow, you know, them to exist in you know, in business today. I know it would be a little bit hard to tell them that you know, under any proposed plan you can't expand, which I think is unfortunate, because I think if there's, you know, anybody that's in business has got to have the opportunity to be able to expand. But you know, I do think that we need to have those discussions, and probably sooner than later. But we can probably have that as part of you know, the next step that we visit about this. But I think it's really important that we do allow these businesses to continue to operate, or at least have some kind of plan. I visited with city manager today about, you know, what some kind of future plan may look like, or being able to fold them in. But right now, I think that these businesses should be allowed to exist. It'd be kind of like having, you know, the city, you know, here I have my barber shop, the city decides to get in the barbering business, you know, and all of a sudden I'm done. You know, that'd be a little bit rough unless they were buying me out.
Well, in the point you make is true. It may not work. It may only work to have an entity do it. I'm not sure. But at any rate, the people who are existing in business, I feel are owed something for their business. The same way I'd like to be treated if that was the situation, that they have a value assigned to their business, and in some way they ought to be compensated for that if they do not continue into the mix of things. I'm not sure that they can't right now, but if it is impossible to do that, then I would think that there needs to be some kind of severance package or buyout per customer, or some yardstick that is applied to equally to everybody. That's my thoughts on that particular item. Do you have anything you'd like to?
I noticed that some of the proposals indicated they would stay in, that these private haulers would be a part of the mix. Is Deffenbaugh reiterated that in their letter, did they not? What is that?
There's different approaches to it. The city's approach said that they would allow those folks to continue serving the customers, and they would receive whatever they were getting already. So some of them would receiving as much as $18 a month. They would continue to receive $18 a month, while that person would be billed $2, for the service, and then the city would make up the difference on that, which would, others would say, hey, you can kind of, you can keep your current customers and bill your current customers in kind of an opt-out. All of the different options have challenges from a billing point of view, because the city would be doing the billing.
Right.
And so there's some challenge that goes along with it. There's some concern that we may wish there to be some sort of an end, so that this isn't, in 30 years from now, somebody has 3 people that we're still, we're still trying to figure out, the billing, on just a few exceptions, but we may want to have some sort of.
And then another question there, a corollary question on that would be, if an individual has a route of 300 or so, and then does he get the right to sell that to another person when he decides to retire? I mean, is there could be. First of all, do you want to have a single entity do it? If you can fold everybody else into it, that's fine, but is there a sunset for those people on someday as well? And if you, there again, if wherever that is, there's some value in terms of exit to them, I believe, in terms of the city taking over what they have worked to acquire, so.
So I had that question, and I think all of our proposals should include an evaluation of how they would work in or out the existing, as long as that information's in there, because I don't want that to be a question that comes up later and we don't have an answer to it. So if we
What's been done currently, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but we've taken that out, and the table that compares prices, the incentive to the local folks, if there's an incentive, it's been removed. Is that
Right, the Public Works Department.
Please stand up.
The Public Works Department included, in their initial proposal, as part of their monthly fee, roughly $135,000, which would go to make up the difference between what their proposal would cost versus what the current small haulers would charge.
Right.
So that's about
subsidy,
$135,000 on an annual
yeah.
basis. We subsequently, in an attempt to make it more apples to apples, have them pull that out, and so that could be then determined separately, because we didn't know what the commission would choose, whether they wanted to continue to subsidize, whether it be buyout, whether it be nothing. So right now, most of the proposals said, hey, you continue to have the small haulers. I know Deffenbaugh specifically says that small haulers can take their recycled materials to their facility. Right. They get the same rebates that the city got. Mm-hmm. So most of the proposals would continue to allow the small haulers to operate. It's just a question how they would be, how the city would bill, or how the customer would pay, and whether there's a subsidy involved or not.
Okay. And that's important, because we need to make sure it's clear. And then the $1.5 million that is the cost of purchasing all of the additional carts included in our proposal. I want to make sure that's clear, because I think some other people have mentioned it as well.
Right, that was really one of the basic requirements of the RFP, is that the responder would provide all the equipment and carts necessary.
Yeah, so how does that $1.5 million investment, or what is called $1 million bucks? I think we just bought similar quantity of carts recently in various sizes for.
Well,
Similar cost?
Well, we're anticipating purely single-family residential of probably about 28,500 and another 5,000 multifamily. But the multifamily may not be the cart, and, it may be
Right.
some type of dumpster or something like that. But, so it's gonna be probably a similar number then, right, to the container rollout you guys did?
It's in the cost per unit
Yeah.
right now. But the
Right.
question is, what
Everybody
is the
agreed on
cost to the city? If we, because we have to make those upfront, that's an upfront cost, and I think it's something we need to make sure that is clear, that one is a loan, shall we say, at a per month rate, and the other is an actual expenditure of between $1 and $2 million for dumpsters or carts or roll-offs. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Sure.
Because that's the number that somebody's going to come and throw at us because we just did it and we know what it costs. And then, of course, the maintenance of those. I mean, there are, those costs are in our estimate, I understand that. I guess I want to make sure we understand there's an upfront cost we would not have if we chose a third party to provide the service. And I believe that's the case. So they have it in their price, but because it's kind of unclear to me where that number is and how we can break that out and budget that money and where that money comes from.
Right, you're right. If the city were to do that, I mean, that is the upfront cost for the carts. But, I mean, we do have, equipment reserve fund, we do have some other sources, and, you've got 18 months before you're gonna be doing something like that as well to prepare for it.
Okay, so that was a question. And then if the city did
Tammy,
it.
that's
Sure.
the city proposal.
If I can speak to that very quickly, Tammy Bennett, City of Lawrence Public Works Assistant Director. The city proposal included the carts and any equipment we would have to buy and assumed a 7-year capitalization for that.
Oh,
So
really?
it is absolutely embedded in the rates over
Great.
those 7 years. How we fund it up front is a decision we'll make, whether it's equipment reserve or bonds or whatever. But it is capitalized over the 7 years of the contract, so that we were really comparing it on a fair basis with the private vendors.
Trucks too.
To Tammy here, can I follow up to Tammy?
Tammy, come back, please.
The proposal from the city included the cost, any cost to bond the interest, the cost of that money?
Yes.
Yes. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, let me come back to the existing vendors right now. In the perfect world, seems to me like if we needed to offer them a opportunity to discontinue their service, a way to do it is to make an offer, and if they so choose to take it, then they're selling their business to the city, basically, and then the city's gonna redistribute that. So, I think I'd be kind of in favor of that type of, situation. It seems very fair that way. They're accepting an offer, and it's not forcing them to quit.
I think that in a lot of ways that's probably the best. I mean, we don't have to do anything. There's a law. There's very clear. In fact, there's an 18-month long. We've been talking about this for a while. So there's been warning, but then now we have an additional length of time that exists to help protect them to make that transition. We've talked about that as being a value, though, of protecting the small haulers. Because we appreciate what they've done, and they're a small business, and
We've all been in, I think we've all been in agreement with that since day one, since the discussion ever started, so.
So, having it continue on and indefinitely, there's ways of doing that. It could be difficult. There could be questions of even liability, and and such as, a lot of these folks do not have insurance, have been told by them. Things like that, and, a one-time sort of, payment would be, I think, definitely the city would appreciate the ability to get rid of the billing hassles that might exist later. But I think that's something that we maybe want to further ask staff to take a look at, have a conversation with those. We know who those folks are and what the extent of their their business is and just try to sort of come up with some sort of proposal for that.
How many vendors are out there? Is there like 6? Please come to the microphone.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Kathy Richardson, the city's waste reduction recycling operations supervisor. There are 6 companies. One is not what we considered in the RFP as the small local curbside hauler, and that's Duff & Boss registered to provide services here in town. And then there is one company that is registered through the city that is strictly providing service to apartment complexes. So no, not to single-family households. The others do provide both services to single-family households and commercial businesses.
Do we know much about these businesses? For instance, number of customers they might have, or number of employees they might have, anything like that?
Yes, we do have some of that information, and they do have quite a bit of a range. Some of them have as little as 70 customers, and some as many as 350.
We've been a strong proponent of their service over the years. We've wanted them to do that. I mean, they are the pioneers to have help us with our
And
recycling
that's exactly
rates.
why I think we want to be sure and take care of them. However that ends, that we want that to be a fair ending for them. So,
I do believe the easiest and best fair ending for that would be a one-time sort of a deal.
One-time offer, but give them the opportunity to stay in business if they want, or they're just gone.
There's no reason, I don't see any reason why they couldn't continue the service that they're offering. It's just that you're paying, you'd be paying $2 a month for the service that,
I understand.
if you chose, maybe somebody would, I don't know.
Okay.
I think one of the things you might want to consider, if they continue in service, as Commissioner Cromwell mentioned, I mean, we may want to address the liability issue in terms of what type of insurance, whether it's work comp or some type of liability insurance, because if they're considered to be contractual employees of the city, that's a little bit different than the arrangement they might have now.
that's a good point, Ed, thank you. Okay, well, staff, do you have enough direction at this point?
I think what we want to do is we want to communicate to all of the vendors that have provided responses, and I'm sure the commission agrees. We want to thank them for their work today. I mean, they put in a lot of work as well, and their interest in the community is appreciated. What we want to do is we want to send them a communication whereby we'd ask them to give us their pricing at the 4-day a week, 4-day bi-weekly pickup, that they would understand that there'd be no minimum tonnage requirements, or at least one in a quote. They would give us quotes and a little bit of a business plan for the glass and the no glass pickup option as well, and that they would then also provide responses as to how they would see their proposal impacting existing haulers and the financial consequences of that. And we would communicate that to them. We'd give them, I think, 7 business days, 10 business days, and then we would provide an additional analysis of that. I think in the meantime, we'd also then talk to the existing haulers, make sure that they've been well briefed on where we are in this review, and talk about some of the different options, and maybe ask them for position statements or something like that, so that they could be effectively communicated to you all. We could maybe try and work out some recommendation in that area. I don't know that that'd be finalized. That's at least, I'm trying to take good notes on the general consensus. May have stepped over a few things.
That's pretty much what we talked about. Commissioner Carter?
Yeah, I think you got it. Although I'm wondering on the, I'm not sure to what extent on the proposals we want the providers to try and figure out how we're going to handle the current providers, because I think we do need at some point here to just face a harsh reality that, you know, we're giving X amount of notice, we're looking at a buyout and trying to be fair, but, you know, their industry popped up at our kind of, you know, filling a need that's there, and unfortunately, there's losses in this. You know, there are. Overall, it's a hugely positive program, but I don't see where we're gonna, from a liability standpoint, service standpoint, et cetera, we're gonna have people other than those we hire and pay, out there collecting once this gets going. It just strikes me as something that probably the commission needs to deal with. Although they wanna give a crack, they have some great novel idea, that's great, but I guess I'm not as concerned about them coming up with some solution for us.
Yeah, well, I'm totally, you know, in favor of taking care of these people because they've done a great job. If you think about it, it really is going to be cumbersome because if somebody who has, say, 200 customers across Lawrence, and they're going to be hopscotching around, yet under mandatory recycling, you're probably going to see, I would hope, at least 4 out of 5 homes put their stuff out in a row. So it becomes a little kind of
Makes
confusing that this one person would have a route that would go all over the city, and yet the neighbors would be picked up by someone else. But I mean, you know, just the kind of wackiness of the nature of the thing.
Do we have access to, I mean, if we're just gonna be talking about any kind of compensation, I mean, and I'm still not sure about how we would do that, do we have access to how many people these private haulers are servicing?
Yeah.
And
We asked for that originally because
Right.
there was a point in time that we said, you know, we want to know your numbers exactly on this date. We have that information.
So current.
We have a list, well, we attempted to capture a list.
October, that's pretty good.
Number for right now, I think Deffenbaugh is around 4,250, and the other, I think the 5 small haulers is 890. And I think one of them mentioned maybe about 300.
But, and that's the most current data we have right now.
It's October,
Yeah. I was just gonna say, it's like a per unit, I mean, and then whatever.
Well, I mean, obviously you can figure out what a person makes gross pretty easily. They charge so much a month times the number of, and then they've got some expenses in there, and they're selling the recycling, I presume, and keeping the money themselves, but.
No, I do want to, I think what we need to do is staff is take a look and see, what's the best way to deal with some type of buyout or severance or something like that. We don't do that very often.
Yeah.
So I think we need to step back, find out about that nationally or something like that, and see what's the appropriate arrangement in regards to that. I mean, Mayor, you're right on about trying to figure out what's capitalize their business and look at the overtime and trying to amortize it out. All those I can understand that, but I think there's probably some good practical issues that we need to tackle in regards to that. We'll try and do that as well.
We'll let you do that, Dave.
Look forward to it.
Any other comments?
No,
tonight?
sir.
Just briefly, I think it's really exciting here at this point. I mean, to me, how exactly we structure this, who's doing it, and, regardless of where exactly that goes, we have an opportunity for $2 a month to get residential curbside, not just residential, we're talking about curbside recycling, and we're talking about businesses, we're talking about multifamily. This is an incredibly, exciting opportunity for the city, and I'm just, it is amazing to think. When we were looking at this solid waste task force, and, actually when I was looking at it a couple of years back, it was, it's gonna be $7, $8, I think we'd seen numbers that were even higher than that per month, and then it was like, it's gonna be $4 to $6, and now we're down to $2. So I think that's tremendous. Now we're to that point, I think, where it's affordable. So I'm very excited about the prospects for Lawrence.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for being here tonight, and thanks to all the companies that provided us with the RFPs, and we'll get back to you here with an email and let you know what else we need to have you do. So, thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the commission tonight? Okay, I don't see anyone. Next item on the agenda then would be future agenda items.
Mayor, Commissioners, I hesitate to point out that we do not have a meeting next week.
Really?
But we will be
Wonder why.
back at it.
Why is that
Who's
again?
responsible for that one anyway?
Oh, yeah.
We'll be back at it on February the 5th. We have indicated that we are going to be working on the Rock Chalk Park development agreement so that we could have that on your city commission agenda by February the 19th. And we're going to obviously work back in order to get that out. That's one of our major work items. We've got a lot of other items as well I think you all are familiar with that we're working on.
Okay, questions? All right. And any commission items this evening?
No,
Okay.
sir.
Calendar?
Mayor, if I could, no, the commission item, a staff item. We have received a number of responses to the RFP that we sent out in regards to the telecommunications data abilities to enhance our service in that area using public right-of-way and other things. I don't know, we had how many responses?
We've received 14 preliminary ones, but they are due on Friday, final.
So I don't know if there's any commission interest in serving on the committee to analyze that. We promised that you would not be interviewing 14.
I'd be happy to be involved.
I'd be happy. I'd be happy if you're happy. Is everyone else happy that he's happy?
Quite.
I just want
I'm
him
happy.
to be happy.
I just want someone to be happy.
Happy campers, that's what we want here. Okay, so we'll let,
I'm gonna get in the recycling business
Let
in the next couple of weeks.
Vice Mayor Dever.
Oh, yeah, Cromwell Environmental.
Yeah, I just started. I'm on the record.
Okay, anything else for commission items or staff agenda items? All right, calendars next. Anything on calendar of noteworthiness?
Mayor, did you see the Joint Economic Development Council meeting on Friday, February the 1st at 7:30? I know that you got the email, but I want to make sure that you saw that.
Okay, I don't have it yet. It's, where's that? Where's it? Here. At 7:30 in the morning?
Yes, sir.
You sure?
Sorry, that's actually it's mine, yes, too, I think.
Let me get even with you. February 1st?
Yes, sir.
I'd also point out the chamber annual dinner says time and location to be determined. That's 5:30 Liberty Hall. We got that? Right, Liberty Hall.
My understanding that there's not a designated city table, it's going to be moving around, so we'll look forward to it.
Okay, any other calendar items? None? And we are at the favorite time of the meeting for all the commissioners. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Moved Cromwell, second Amix. All fair say aye. Aye.